Good morning, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari. I'm with North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging. We welcome you all this morning for another great webinar in our partnership with Haiman+Hogue. And we're going to start this morning by giving you a little bit of information about the CEUs and what you need to do for those of you that are joining us for CEUs. So Sheila Williamson with Haiman+Hogue is going to if we can advance to slide one, and then Sheila is going to go over the CEUs with you.
Good morning again. Yes, we're so glad you could join us today. This is very simple to do, okay? Marty has there's two ways to do this. Marty has the two documents that I will need returned for to log you in, basically, to receive your certificates. You can either, if you don't want to wait for Marty to send them to you, you can either email me, and my email is on the screen right now, sheila@haimanhogue.com, directly after this, and I will send the two documents to you, which is a sign-in and an eval. That's all I need you to do. Sign them, scan it, send it to me, then I will send you your certificate. These are good for, again, nurses, social workers, assisted living managers, and LPCs. Okay, and actually there are some other people that have been participating that are caregivers, and I'm sending them one for social work as well, because they might as well qualify for that. So anyway, happy to do this for you. It's very simple. So please either email me or wait for Marty to send you the two documents and then send them to me, and I will send it back to you.
Great. And I'll be sending you out a follow-up email with that information as well. Also, that'll include the link to the slides once again. You'll get one email from me probably tomorrow morning, if not this afternoon, and then you'll get the other one, and then a second follow-up email will be sent out in several days that will have a link to the recording from today if you want to re-watch that or share that with anybody that you feel like can benefit from that. The other thing that we've started that's new, and one of the things that I've realized as we reapplying for our funding to do this, we need some more stats. And so when you close out of today's webinar, you're going to see a survey pop up. If you can fill that out, it's a real simple survey, but it gives us some information and some feedback so we can feed that information to our funders as we apply for new funding to continue to do this. So again, that'll pop up as you close out the webinar today. That should pop up on your screen. So Sheila, I'm going to let you introduce Fred, and we'll get going.
Thank you. Today, Fred Haiman is going to give our presentation. He wrote this, and he is the founding partner of Haiman+Hogue. Before he says anything, I want to remind you one more time. Most of you have joined us before, and you know this, but this is strictly educational. This is not we do this for a living, yes. We are an elder law firm. However, this is strictly to educate the public. So this is not meant to sell or to get you to use our services at all. It is just to use us as a resource to educate you, which is why I said, if you need other topics, please let us know. Fred has a wonderful past, and especially with this topic, because if you have not heard him present before, Fred was a police officer before he was an attorney. So he has dealt with this on both sides of the fence. And it is very sad. And our company right now is dealing with many cases like this. And it's just horrifically sad. But our job is to educate you, to help others, that maybe we can make this better and we can nip this in the bud earlier so that it doesn't happen as much. Fred has been an attorney for over 20 years. So even after he was a lawyer, a police officer. So anyway, with that being said, Fred, take it away.
Thank you, Sheila. I appreciate that. As Sheila said, I have been practicing. Actually, this is my 25th year. I keep getting older and older. But prior to that, I was a police officer in El Paso, Texas for 5 years before going to, as my chief said, I went to the dark side when I went over to law school. But luckily, I haven't gone completely to the dark side. And we're doing things that we absolutely love, and we're taking care of people. One of the things I do want to clarify before we get started is I'm hoping that I give this presentation well, because for those of you all who are football fans out there, I'm in mourning today because my daughter goes to the University of Alabama, and we were very upset last night at the outcome of the game. But I'm trying to do the best I can, so I'll try to present the best I can. But another thing I want to clarify is that what we're going to talk about today is not exactly what we do for a living. So we are elder law attorneys. We do estate planning and elder law, but we do not represent people when there's an abuse or neglect or issues dealing with this. We guide our clients, and we're involved in cases that have this, we're directly involved in cases that have these things that I'm going to talk about that apply to it. For instance, we have a case right now where we're trying to do a guardianship of a lady who has severe dementia, and she's being exploited really, really bad, to the point of, I think the last figures I heard is that they had gotten over $700,000 from her while we're trying to get the guardianship established so that we can stop this exploitation. So we do a lot of that, but for those of y'all that need somebody that does directly, like represents people in abuse cases or represents people in neglect cases, we can help guide you to that. Typically, those are personal injury attorneys that handle those kind of cases, but we do not handle this directly. But as I will explain as we go through this, my experience in being a police officer, I dealt with this all the time. And another thing that I did realize, both as an officer and now as a lawyer, is that most law enforcement aren't trained properly in this area. And they don't look at this area as a crime like it is. They look at it more as a civil problem or an adult protective services problem. They don't see the criminal aspect of it, which is difficult when you're dealing with it and you're trying to get law enforcement to do their job. And so most of the time, I don't want to defend the law enforcement, but they're not trained in it. They're not properly trained in these type of areas to identify them as a crime. We quite often have to go up the ladder and get in with the detectives and supervisors to be able to talk to them, to make them realize this is a criminal issue most of the time that we have to pursue. So there's a couple of different topics I'm going to be addressing, but first off, we're going to start with abuse. What exactly is elder abuse? We hear that term all the time, but what does it mean? And the World Health Organization defines it as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust, which causes harm or distress to an older person. So that's a very broad definition, but in essence, it's taking advantage of older people in some way, shape, or form. There are various types of abuse that we see all the time, and they usually fall into these four categories. There's physical abuse, which is easy to identify: hitting, slapping, punching, actually hurting somebody. There's psychological and emotional abuse, which is much harder to identify because it's dealing with humiliation, ridicule, criticizing, blaming, bullying, that kind of stuff. There's financial abuse, and that's the one we see quite often in what we're doing, is people that are elderly that are losing their capacity, their mental capacity, and they're being taken advantage of financially. There is sexual abuse, of course, and then there is neglect. And neglect is the hardest one, I think, that people don't often see as an abuse, because it's lack, it's depriving. Instead of an actual physical act of doing something, it's actually taken away. But that is a very common one, of lack of food, lack of treatment, lack of housing or clothing or things like that. There are many warning signs for each one of them, and most of you all are probably very familiar with this. In physical abuse, of course, we look for bruises, scars, redness on the body, broken bones, of course. Emotional abuse is a little bit harder, I guess, and as it said in bold on this slide, it's the most underreported abuse. And why? Because we're ashamed. Nobody wants to admit that they've been emotionally abused, even if they've accepted it to themselves that they have. And especially elderly people, they're trying to keep their independence. They're slowly losing their faculties as they get older. They're losing a lot of their independence and their ability to do things, and they don't want to admit that somebody has been emotionally abusing them. Financial exploitation, the same thing is, in this case that this biggest case that we're dealing with right now, this lady has been online trying to find a partner because she's lonely. And of course, she found a scammer, and the scammer has been milking her out of money using, I need your help and feel sorry for me type of tactics. And that's probably one of the most common things today. We have scammers around the world that are working daily, probably harder than some of us work on our real jobs, doing everything they can to see who they can steal from. Sexual abuse, we've seen those in nursing homes, even from care providers that have taken advantage of certain patients in a sexual extent. What do we look for? We look for, of course, bruising, just like physical abuse, but we also look for UTIs and issues like that are reoccurring. Neglect, of course, we look for malnutrition, dehydration, poor hygiene, non-compliance to prescription medication, and unsafe living conditions. When I have not seen this as much since I've been a lawyer, but I did see this, unfortunately, way too much when I was a police officer. The neglect issue of elderly and even not elderly. Those are very, very sad situations to me. The National Council on Aging says approximately 1 in 10 Americans over 60 are experiencing some type of elder abuse. That's extremely disturbing. 10% of the elderly population is being abused in one of those categories that we just talked about. Some estimate the ranges as high as 5 million elders who are abused each year, and the study estimates that 1 in 14 cases of abuse are reported to authorities. So 10% of these people are being abused, and only less than 10%, about 6% are actually reporting it. 6 million cases are reported annually, and if we use those statistics I just gave, can you imagine how many actual cases are happening if only 6 million are being reported? An estimated over 18 million cases are not reported. COVID-19 has brought with it more abuse, robocalls, tests and treatment scams, supply and provider scams. I think we've seen a little bit of slowdown in that as this COVID issue has drug out for the last 2 years, but that was really, really bad, especially at the beginning. So how can it be prevented? Older adults can stay safe by taking care of their health. One of the things I having the both pleasure and burden of taking care of my mom, who is going to be 90 years old on the 26th of this month. She is now in a nursing care facility because she's declined in health and can't get around on her own. She was independent until less than a year ago. But one of the big things I kept trying to hound with her is you got to keep your health up. You got to walk. You got to get out. You can't just become dormant and not take care of both your physical health, your nutritional health, and your mental health. And so if you're working with elderly people, that's probably one of the best things you can do is help them maintain that health and encourage them to do things to keep themselves strong physically, mentally, and nutritionally. seeking professional help for drug, alcohol, and depression issues. I've gone through that with my mom, where she went through severe depression, especially when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she started getting hallucinations. She started feeling these bugs crawling on her. And I finally got her to a neurologist, and apparently that is not uncommon as people age. There's switches in the brain that go as we get older. And one of the switches in my mom's brain, she was perfectly sharp. She didn't have very much dementia. She's for a lady almost 90, she's extremely sharp. But all of a sudden, one little thing in her brain triggered this feeling of bugs crawling on her. And that triggered depression because she couldn't get rid of it. And it was so frustrating for her. We finally got medication and seemed to have gotten it under control, but it took us probably 9 months or so before we did that. So getting help for those kind of things, attending support groups, planning for their future. That's one thing that I see with elderly all the time is they kind of give up. Oh, I'm where I am. I'm going to die where I am. And life's never going to get better. Trying to help them plan for the future, even if it's small steps. And okay, what are we going to do for upcoming Valentine's? What are we going to do this summer? What would you like to get done? Those kind of things. Staying active in the community. Places like the senior centers that are around are fantastic for keeping people up and running. Taking care of their own mail, keeping them as independent as possible. I kept my mom as independent. She took care of all of her own mail. She took care of her bills as long as she could. I monitor it, make sure, but I try to let her still have control of as much as she could because that gives them a sense of importance. Having their own phone. My mom still, even in her home nursing facility where she is right now, she has a phone so that she can get calls and call people. So there's a lot of things that they can try to stay healthy, stay independent. Who's responsible for reporting elder abuse? Most of you all on this call know these because these are extremely important when you are working directly, but there are federal and state laws and agencies designed for helping and protecting older people. The Elder Abuse Act of 2009 is the most comprehensive bill ever passed, and it deals with abuse, exploitation, and neglect. And any person who is in some way responsible for the care of an older adult should make a report if he or she has a reason to believe that they are being abused or neglected. Now, that is every profession, not just professions that are directly caring with elderly people. If I, as an attorney, am in a situation where I believe, and I have strong reason to believe that a client is being neglected, or even a parent or a grandparent of a client, even if I feel that it's my client neglecting that person, I have a duty to report it. Now, there is attorney-client issues and all that we have to balance, but when it comes down to it, the law leans in favor of, did you have a reason to believe? And if you did, why didn't you report it if you didn't? And that basically puts the burden on the person that did not report. So there are ways to report, even reporting anonymously, just so that gets reported and at least looked into. Texas law specifically says that anyone who thinks a child or a person 65 or older or an adult with disabilities is being abused, neglected, or exploited, they must report. So the Texas law doesn't give it an option. It's not a might report or can report or should report. It's a must report. You must report it to Department of Family and Protective Services. A person who reports abuse in good faith is immune from civil and criminal liability. And the department keeps the names of the person confidential. So as I just said, it is mandated reporting. Mandated reports can be liable by both civil and criminal legal system if they know of possible elder abuse and intentionally fail to report it. So again, the burden falls on the person when there's investigations into this and there's an evidence to show that somebody knew or strongly should have known and they didn't report it, the burden then falls on them to say why they didn't and to show a good cause that they didn't report it. So again, you're erring on the side of caution. It's better to report than not report. If you suspect abuse, you should take notes, get pictures if you can, write down detailed descriptions of the injuries, write down any statements that you get from the victim or from witnesses. Again, I don't think I have to tell those of you on this call because you're in the world of document, document, document. If there's any issues that come up that you think are abuse and neglect, you have to document as much as you possibly can. So who do you report this abuse to? In Texas, we have the Texas Adult Protective Services. I know that most of you all on this webinar probably know who they are, but for those of you all that don't, that is the state agency directly responsible for overseeing the care of our elderly population. They are the ones that are called in whenever there is a potential neglect or abuse case. They investigate and they put out findings, and they have certain powers to remove elderly, put them in safe places, do whatever it takes to make sure an elderly person is being taken care of. Now, with every agency, every government agency, and I did see some people log in earlier that are with Adult Protective Services, they are severely overworked. They are over caseload, and they do everything they can to keep up the best they can. So as with, you hear people complaining about Child Protective Services not doing their job because they don't have enough people. Adult Protective Services, their strains on them are the exact same thing. But they are the division that takes care of this type of thing in Texas. This is a copy of their mission statement. APS's mission is to protect older adults and persons with disabilities from abuse, neglect, and exploitation by investigating and providing or arranging for services if needed to stop or prevent further harm. One of the things that I realize a lot of people don't see about Adult Protective Services is that disability, persons with disabilities. Now, what I found, and I'll let some of the Adult Protective Services people chime in if this is not correct, but what I have found is the disability issue is usually adults with disabilities. That if we have children with disabilities, that usually falls back on Child Protective Services rather than Adult Protective Services. So responsibilities for Adult Protective Services, they investigating reports of abuse, neglect, and exploitation of adults and people with disabilities. They conduct the investigations and they provide services. They also have a section that does educating the public about prevention of elder abuse. So they have a lot of good resources, both on their website and other places for good educational materials on this topic. Just to give you some stats, and the most current stats of when I put this slideshow together were 2018, so they're a few years behind. But just to give you kind of an idea of how overworked this agency is. Their budget in 2018 was over $61 million. They had 703 staff. Only out of those 703, only 495 are caseworkers. Their entry salary is $31,000 a year, which makes me want to cry because I think you can probably get a job at a fast food restaurant for not much right around that, which is horrible. Their turnover rate is over 25%. 1 out of every 4 staff are turning over because of the workload, because of the stress load, because of everything that goes. And 495 caseworkers in 2018 handled almost 85,000 investigations. That I'll let you run the numbers, but that's a lot. That is outrageous to think that that number of people can adequately do their job with that kind of a workload. So what is elder law? Elder law is an area of the legal practice that specializes in this population, in the elderly population. It's developed as especially because of lifespans increasing. So when I started practicing law 25 years ago, elder law was just getting off the ground. You really didn't know a lot about it. It was funny because the first 10 years of my legal career, I was a trial lawyer. And those of y'all that have heard me speak before or know my story, you know that I had some health issues in 2007 that almost took my life. I almost died in 2007 from ulcerative colitis and needing to have my colon removed and my intestines ruptured and all that kind of stuff. But after I went through my near-death experience and I got back on my feet and didn't want to be a trial lawyer anymore, I got a call from some attorneys wanting me to come to work with them to do elder law. And my first question to them when they said that was, what is elder law? Because I didn't even know what it was. It was such a newer area of the law that a lot of people have heard that term, but they don't know exactly what it deals with. So, the broad definition is elder law deals with all the issues that affect the elderly. Now, as I said earlier, elder law has many areas. So the elder law that our firm practices is not directly involved with representing people in abuse, neglect, and exploitation cases. We do elder law in areas of probate and guardianship and Medicaid and VA benefits for long-term care planning and those kind of things. Now, we refer out a lot of these people that want to sue a nursing home or whatever because of neglect or do things like that. We also refer them out when there is a criminal issue that needs to be taken care of in those regards. But one of the things I wanted to cover, this is kind of a new area I've added to these slides, is an area that a lot of people don't know about when it deals with nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And this is the Ombudsman program. The Ombudsman program is set up by Health and Human Services to help people that have complaints about nursing homes and assisted living facilities and are able to work through that without having to go the lawsuit route or other areas. So the Ombudsman program is an exceptional program that has been set up to do that. Now, those are the contacts, and you're going to get these slides, so you don't need to write those down. We'll get these to you, but those are the contacts on how to get involved in the Ombudsman program if there is somebody that you know that needs to file a complaint or has an issue with a nursing home or assisted living facility. But this kind of gives you an idea of what they do. As of January of this year, all nursing homes and assisted livings are required to post that information I just gave you on their websites. So that is a legal requirement that they have to have that available on their websites now. The program gives residents and families information about their rights and works with facilities to solve specific problems. They are free and they are confidential. In 2019, for nursing facilities, the Ombudsman conducted 21,000 visits to homes of over 1,230 different nursing facilities that they visited. Now, when I look at those numbers, multiple facilities were getting multiple visits when there's only 1,230 facilities being visited 21,000 times. 93% of the complaints were verified to be true. So the Ombudsman program went in, looked into it, the complaint, and found that they were true. 79% of those were resolved through this program, which is a very high success rate. To give you an idea of what the types of complaints that they deal with, over 1,200 of them were failure to respond to a request for help. This includes call lights. I've had that issue with where my mom is that she hits her light because she needs something and it takes 30, 45 minutes before somebody comes in and checks on her. And I'm with my mom almost daily, and I'm on top of them. And they probably don't like me because of that, but I don't care because I'm taking care of my mom. And so a lot of those complaints, like they said, are valid because a lot of these facilities are understaffed. 860 of those complaints dealt with cleanliness, pests, bug issues, or housekeeping issues. 811 problems with the food quality, quantity, or variation. 692, failure to following discharge planning or notice procedures, and 644 were dignity and respect issues, the way they were treated. For the same year for assisted living facilities, there was over 13,000 visits to over 2,000 facilities. 91% of them were verified as true and 78% were resolved through the program. The complaints at the assisted living facilities are very much similar to the nursing facilities that we just went over. So federal and state law guarantee the following rights for residents of these homes. The right to be treated with respect, dignity, and consideration, the right to be free from mental, physical, and verbal abuse, the right to choose their own physician, the right to be transferred or discharged, not to be transferred or discharged without cause or notice, and the right to make complaints and grievances without being treated horribly or discriminated against. So I'm going to finish this presentation up really talking about what exactly is elder law. So elder law falls into many areas. As you can see here, I've got 11 different areas that elder law covers. The first we do in our firm, we do estate planning. So elder law deals with how do we put documents in place as people age. We put documents in place to help people as they age and as their health declines. So wills and trusts and powers of attorney and healthcare directives and those kind of things. We deal with Medicaid and long-term care issues. How do we help people get into long-term care and get that paid for? I would say that the VA benefits fall into that same category, but unfortunately, because of the law changes of a few years ago, we were not seeing as many VA cases as unfortunately VA veterans deserve. We're doing more Medicaid, I think, than we are VA benefits. Guardianship, I put in here, guardianship, conservatorship, and commitment matters. Guardianship and conservatorship are two interchangeable terms that quite often mean the same thing, but they're different from state to state. So some of my attorney friends in other states, they are in the business of doing conservatorships, which is the exact same thing I'm doing in Texas called guardianship. So for those of you that are not aware, guardianship has really little to do with children. You hear that term all the time. I'm going to get a guardian for my niece or nephew. Who do you want to name guardian of your children if you pass away? But when it comes to guardianship, it's adults who cannot care for themselves. So it's adults that are disabled, either because of a special needs. So we do a lot of guardianships for children that turn 18 that have autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, other special needs issues. Now they're 18, they're an adult. The law says once you're an adult, you're on your own. And mom and dad lose a lot of rights and abilities to take care of a child the minute that child turns 18. So with these disabled children, special needs children, we have to do guardianship. The parents have to do guardianship for their own child in order to keep taking care of them. We also do guardianship for adults on the very top end, dementia, Alzheimer's. As people age and they cannot take care of themselves anymore, they have to have a legal guardian appointed to take care of them. Conservatorship in Texas is children. So if you need to take care of your niece or your nephew because something happened to your brother and sister, then you would have to go to family court and do conservatorship for the children. The only time I do guardianship issues for children are when children inherit money. So if a child has money, a parent dies and leaves a life insurance policy or some type of inheritance, or the child was involved in something that there was a lawsuit and a settlement or a judgment given, a money judgment, then that child can't take money until they're 18. So quite often we have to set up what's called a guardianship of the estate to manage that money until the child becomes an adult. Protection against elder abuse, neglect, and fraud is an elder law area, but again, it's a special elder law area where it's honestly difficult to find attorneys that do this, that specialize in this area, because this is a very difficult area. I'll be bluntly honest, it's a very difficult area to get paid in. And so finding attorneys that can represent these kind of cases when there's no money to be paid for their legal services, it's really difficult to find somebody. End of life planning, we do a lot of that in our office. Of how do we plan for what's going to happen at the end of life? Do we have our documents in place? Do we have everything in place so that when somebody passes away, the estate transfers smoothly to the next generation or to the surviving spouse or whatever that case may be? All level of disability and medical care. Retirement planning, Social Security benefits, Medicare and Medicaid coverage, those kind of break into different areas. We do not, in my office, do anything dealing with Social Security. And that, again, is a very difficult area to find an attorney to help with, because that's another area that's hard to get paid in. So we do retirement planning for our clients. We don't do Social Security benefits. We do Medicare. We help a little bit with Medicare, but not a lot. But we do more Medicaid than we do anything else. Consumer protection, nursing home and in-home care, landlord-tenant issues. Usually your real estate attorneys handle those. And various levels of rights and discrimination. Those are usually your civil rights attorneys. Some of the ones that you see on TV when we have these police involved shootings and stuff like that. Those are the type of attorneys that will handle those cases. Again, if there's money to be made. That's the reality of our world. Is it's hard to get legal help when the attorney's not going to get paid some way for helping. So why would you want to look at hiring or look into consulting with an elder law attorney? The elder law attorneys focus their practice on the legal area dealing with seniors. So we specifically look at the areas dealing with as people age. We work with a variety of tools and techniques specifically for this age group and the goals and objectives of these older clients. We use a holistic approach. So quite often I bring in people from all different areas to take care of my clients. So we work with financial advisors, we work with accountants, sometimes we have to work directly with APS and other agencies like that when we're doing guardianships, etc. So we bring in various entities beyond the legal field in order to take care of them, housing issues, etc. We bring our knowledge to issues facing seniors to allow them and their staff to ignore the myths. I deal with that a lot, of how overcoming a lot of the myths that deal with this area. We take into account and empathize with some of the physical and mental difficulties. So the one thing I have found in this area of elder law is I hire attorneys, I hire staff who care. Because you can't, like most of what you all do for a living in your line of work, if you do it just for the money, that's not what it's about. The area of law that we work in, we pray with our clients. We go visit our clients. We do more than just provide legal services, because there's so much more with this population that you need to actually care about what you do in order to be effective at it. And it's tied to formal and informal systems with social workers, psychologists, etc. One of the reasons I love doing these educational things is because we work with a lot, and we need to have good relationships so that we can use you all to help our clients when we need that help. So I have talked, I don't know how long my time is, but I think I've bombarded you with a ton of information, and we always want to leave time at the end of these presentations for questions. So at this point, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to turn it over to Sheila and to Marty, and I'm going to sit back and let you guys throw questions at me.
I'm going to do two things here, if I could. While you're reading the questions, Sheila, I'm going to go over a little bit about the Ombudsman program, because the agency that I work for, the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging, is responsible for the Ombudsman program in 14 counties. The 14 counties that surround Dallas and Tarrant County. Somebody made a comment about HHS, and they do oversee the Ombudsman program. But the Ombudsman program is really reliant on volunteers. When you go to a nursing home and you look for the Ombudsman program, the contact, in almost every case, there's a volunteer assigned to that nursing home to advocate for the people in that nursing home. Make it very clear that these are not people that work for the nursing home. These are advocates for the residents of the nursing home. But they rely on volunteers, and they always need volunteers to become ombudsman. I know that they pretty much cover the nursing homes. They want to cover all the assisted living facilities. I think they have some, but I don't know that they've gotten enough volunteers to cover all of those. And the nursing homes are the first priority. But so if you guys know anyone that is interested in becoming an ombudsman, there's quite a bit of training involved. But I can tell you, for our service area, the last I knew, there were 2 staff people for 14 counties to handle the ombudsman program. It is almost all volunteers. And so I just throw that out in case you guys might know somebody that's interested.
Thank you, Marty. That's awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Do you guys want to go and hit the questions? I don't know that there's many.
Okay, first off, well, Megan, a long time ago, asked, because you'd mentioned a couple of times that this is not just 65 and up, but it is for adults with disabilities. She is curious about what is considered a disability.
Well, I mean, typically it's your disabilities that are defined by federal law, your, autism, cerebral palsy, those kind of things. But really, it's anybody that lacks capacity in some way, shape, or form. So the broad definition is, does this person lack mental or physical capacity to be able to care for themselves? And if they can't care for themselves and are reliant on somebody else in either a physical or mental capacity to help them, that can be considered a disability, and therefore being taken advantage of in this abuse neglect issue.
Okay, here is a comment, and this is good for everyone to know. I didn't know this either. Great overview and information in all areas. I also want to put out that the financial department with the Senior Source in Dallas is another agency in the past who has been used to combat financial scams. Just another possible resource. So that is good. That I hope everyone is listening to that, because that is, and these scams are just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. And then a lot of the comments are about APS and how some people don't feel, and I know that we have some APS employees on here, and I'm being careful how I say this, but I know if you're reading the chat, you've seen this, that some people feel that they don't do much, that they take the information, but they want to close the case as fast as possible.
Well, and I think I touched on that, Sheila. And I've worked with APS for 30 years. I worked with APS when I was a police officer. I worked with APS and CPS for all those years. And in their defense, they're doing the best thing they possibly can. I mean, they're doing the best job they can with the circumstances. It would be like me telling you, well, you have 150 investigations to do, and you have 30 days to do them in. And good luck with that. And so I think that most APS people that I work with, they truly, truly care. They truly want to make a difference. But they're so overburdened, understaffed, under-resourced that they're not even given a chance. It'd be like, just using my football scenario, it'd be like telling a quarterback, you don't have a front line. We're not going to give you an offensive line to protect you. Good luck with that defense contacting you so you can pass the ball. You know, God bless anybody that takes that job, because that's why there's a turnover so high, is it's such a high stress area because of the demands put on them. So I think that, yes, of course, APS could do a better job. Every governmental agency could do a better job. But quite often we take it out on the people doing the job, not the government that's not supporting the people trying to do the job.
And the people trying to do the job are the people making $31,000 a year that are getting no appreciation for what they're out to do, and they have no control over the funding issue and the lack of staffing. You're absolutely right.
That's exactly.
Well, I have two more that has come up, but I want to say one thing too. I had recently someone reach out to me, and it is a senior professional, and she told me of a scenario that, and I said to her, it doesn't matter. I said to her, you need to call APS immediately. She said, yeah, but I hate to, because then what is going to happen to me? Well, I love that Fred pointed out that these are all anonymous. I thought it was, and I told her that I thought it was anonymous. And Fred was on a call and I couldn't let him talk to her, but anyway, I hope that she did report it, because it has nothing to do with me, and I also had somebody else ask me about a neighbor that they suspected. And I said, well, there again, I would call APS, because it's not going to hurt you, but you could be saving the other person if you know, and now that I see that it's a crime not to do that, then that'll help me when people reach out to me. But I want to read you this. I work in a unit, an inpatient unit for hospice. Unfortunately, we have had an increase of what appears to be neglect, with fractures and unstageable wounds. I don't know what that part means, but the patients usually die soon after coming in. I have made the strong suggestion to families to speak to the medical examiner when we call to report the death and ask for an autopsy for the family to take action against the facility. Is this appropriate?
I think it's perfectly appropriate. If you feel that there is the issues in that, then yes, advising the family to look into it, there's not a thing wrong with that. Not a thing wrong with that at all.
I want to jump back to Sheila's comment about the senior source, if I could. Real quick, we did some webinars on this, actually some in-person training on this a few years back. The Dallas County, the DA's, Dallas County District Attorney's Office has partnered with the senior source, and they do an incredible job in investigating, especially financial fraud against elderly. In so many cases, it's family members who are taking advantage of their elderly parents. And they have a program that was funded in partnership with the Dallas DA's office. We were trying at the time to get one in Collin County. They were not receptive to it at the time. But if you guys know of any other ones, I'd love for you to put it in the chat. But I do know that the senior source and the Dallas DA's office has an exceptional partnership and program for that.
Okay, and there's one in Fort Worth too. GSI in Fort Worth is home to the Financial Exploitation Prevention Center, a collaboration with the Tarrant County District Attorney, and more than 10 agencies that work together to prevent fraud and financial exploitation of older and other vulnerable adults, help victims recover, and prosecute offenders. This is excellent information for all of us, including us, because Fred, tell them about that Fred has had some horrible cases like this.
Well, Sheila, before I forget, these resources that are coming in like that, please make note of them, because our office desperately needs that, so that we can use those resources too. And Sheila, what are you referring to when you're saying that I had that one
when with the family member that the judge brought her back, you found that she was taking all the money?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It was probably one of the first guardianship issues I was ever involved in when I first started doing elder law. And it was a daughter who had power of attorney for her mom. Mom had severe Alzheimer's to the point where she didn't even know who people were anymore. She was probably at last stage Alzheimer's, and she was in a home. And daughter had control of all of her finances. Mom had about $5 million, I think, in various accounts. The daughter used her power of attorney to transfer all of that money to her own accounts. And when it became aware to the other sister, and the sister came to us, the daughter who took all the money was on a 40-day around the world cruise on mommy's money. And we had to go in, we had to get orders. We got a judge to actually find her where she was in one of the ports around the world, had her served, and basically told her, if you don't report back to court within so many days, there's going to be an arrest warrant issued for her. We brought her back from where she was and were able to hold her at least accountable. We weren't able to get all of the money back, but we got a great portion of it only because of a financial advisor who was on top of it and saw some suspicious activity by the bad sister and reported it to the good sister. But if that financial advisor wouldn't have been on top of it and seen that, no telling how much she would have gotten away with before we got it. But, so yes, as mentioned earlier, quite often these exploitation cases are family stealing money from their own family.
Sarah says, I would also like to share my response whenever anyone tells me we don't need to make a report because they don't suspect APS will do anything. We do not report because we expect APS to do something that will help us. We do report because we're mandated reporters and we're trying to protect people who are vulnerable. Amen to that. Thank you so much for saying that, because I agree with that 100%.
And that's one of the things I do want to emphasize. I'm so glad that was said. You don't have an option. I mean, if you feel that there's exploitation, neglect, or abuse, you have to report it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And if you don't report it and it comes back that you knew about it and didn't report it, then you're going to probably lose your license and you could be charged criminally and civilly for failure to report. So that if I can't emphasize that enough, those of us in this profession have a duty to report.
Okay, now, okay, GSI stands for, because people keep asking, it's Guardianship Services Incorporated. So that's what it stands for. Excellent, because I didn't know that either. Thank you. Good. Okay. And there's the website. GSI's website is www.guardianshipservices.org. Okay, and then it is home to the Financial Exploitation Prevention Center. And I guarantee you we need that too, especially right now. This is excellent, but I have another scenario that we have had come up before. And, you know, when, for example, we work with several different placement professionals, you know, that are involved in placing people in the appropriate areas. Twice in 3 months, a family member would come in crying because when they had already set up the interview, the everything, and the parent, the person that needed the care was actually looking forward to this. Okay, the spouse was still alive, and when they got there to move them or to have, and the spouse denied that they need to go and locked them out. And so then they called us and said, what are we going to do now? And this is a problem. You're seeing more of this. I know that the next webinar that we do is on cognitive decline and what happens if you don't have planning in place before that. I know, and this is going to be addressed because this is happening more and more. And in one of these cases, they suspected abuse, and it probably not intentionally, but the elderly person couldn't care for the other person well enough anymore. And they were falling and they were all these things. So they did call APS, and APS did get involved. And I hope and pray it had a good ending. But I'm telling you that this is a very common thing now. And I know that all of you that are in senior living, you see this. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, Fred, I want you to touch on this. I have had 2 friends that work for senior living communities. And so when the family comes in to meet with them, to place them, where they need to go, well, there's always options. Well, most places have care levels, and, there's options about this. And obviously the higher care level, the more money it is, and blah, blah, blah. They have told me several times that the child, who is an adult of the person, says, oh, no, they don't need any of that. And they are almost certain that the reason they're doing this is because of the money.
Oh, sure. That happens all the time.
And they've asked me, is there anything they can do about that? Could they report that to APS? Or is that not exactly?
You have to have more than a hunch. That's the one thing that's in a lot of those cases, you kind of have a hunch that this is not right. It doesn't feel right. Doesn't quite smell right. But I know that probably our APS people from their perspective are going to say, hey, you got to have a little bit more evidence to help us to so that we know where to go, other than it just doesn't feel right. It's kind of like with a police officer that, police officers can't act just on a hunch. They have to have probable cause. And so APS works on those same type of standards. They have to have enough cause to be able to investigate. And so those are difficult. Those are difficult cases when it's that close.
Yeah.
I had a couple questions that I just answered in the Q&A box. One of them was, if we can't get help from APS, who can we call? And my only response would be try local law enforcement, and try to report it to them. If it's really bad and you're not getting anywhere, you can try the DA's office. They usually have a section within that office that investigate or handles these type of cases. You may be able to get some attention there. But again, that's difficult. The other question that I had was, it was their understanding that the Texas statutes don't mention emotional or verbal abuse specifically, and I don't know the answer to that. My recollection and my knowledge when I look back through it was, yes, it does. It covers all kinds of exploitation, abuse, and neglect, but I don't know if it specifically talks about verbal and emotional. But verbal and emotional does fall into that category. So I have been involved in cases where district attorneys' offices have taken a criminal aspect when there was severe verbal and emotional abuse. Typically, it's connected with others, sexual or physical, typically, but I know it does fall into the category.
Okay, one more is that I know of a case where, and it was I think that's just strictly memory. No, it isn't. It's assisted living and memory care facility in Frisco. A person who, by the way, was driving a sports car, dropped off their parent and with all their belongings, and the executive director said, okay, I need you to sign all this. He signed all the papers, all right, and he looked right at her and he said, she's yours now, I'm done. And she said, no, now we'll need, this and that and the other. He said, nope, I've done my job, I'm done. And she would not do anything else. And so she then called the police because this person needed more. She needed medication, she needed clothes, she needed this and that and the other. And the police told her that this was not a crime. Now, and I don't know that they couldn't do that. They couldn't go arrest him because he really had not committed a crime.
Well, and that's the problem is as children, we do not have a legal duty to take care of our parents. We do not have a legal obligation to take care of our parents. The parents have a legal obligation to take care of a child that are 18. But, when it goes the other way around, and so quite often in situations like that, the investigative authorities, whether it be law enforcement or APS, their hands are tied in that, yeah, this is horrible, and it should be a crime, but it's really not. And so you kind of fall into those gray areas where it's really hard to do anything about.
Somebody, can you hear me? Okay, my screen went black and I don't know why, but I just wanted to make sure you can hear me. But
yes.
I have had firsthand experience in the past, and it's been a while, of getting the police involved in order to get CPS involved. And a couple of people have mentioned that, and I have firsthand experience that has worked for us. Once we got the law enforcement involved, let them call CPS, and that was very effective in the case we were working on.
Yeah,
Marty, you might know this next one more than Fred. Who or what agency handles guardianship services in Denton County and Collin County?
Health Services of North Texas used to. I pulled up their website. I don't know if they still do. I would have to. I'll try to look into that and put that in the follow-up email. I'm not sure there is somebody now that's doing that.
Okay. The next person says, if the client is being neglected, then that is the issue. I've seen much neglect due to the family wanting the client's money, even if it's just an SSI check. I have reported these cases based on the specifics of the neglect. I didn't try to prove that it was for financial exploitation. And I agree with that. Don't you, Fred?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I was answering a written question at the same time you were reading that.
It says, if the client is being neglected, then that is the issue. I've seen much neglect due to the family wanting the client's money, even if it's just an SSI check. I reported these cases based on the specifics of the neglect. I did not try to prove that it was for financial exploitation.
Yeah, you document and report.
Okay, and then I need someone to clarify that apparently there's an agency, another acronym that I don't know either. DV/SA. Marty, what is that?
I don't know. I was looking for the answer too.
Okay, someone please answer us because we don't know this.
Yeah.
Okay, I did get one in the box that said in Arkansas, scams can be reported to the Attorney General. I think that is the case in Texas also, that the Attorney General's office also takes some of these scam type of, especially financial scamming type cases.
Jody Langston, could you give us the agencies that you're referring to as DV/SA? That would be very helpful. If you could put that in the chat, that would be great.
It's Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Agency.
Oh, I see.
Okay, I did not know that. I did not know that. Okay.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah.
Well, Suzanne put in one in the Q&A that is what I call one of our most difficult areas of kind of caught between okay and not okay, but there's not much we can do about it. And it says, how about a nursing home resident alleging children misusing money? Though may just be paranoia and planning to get a lawyer to change directives from them having DPOA and MPOA and physical health now declining. APS has been involved and states she is making her own decisions. No one else to call for emergencies if she does not want children contacted. That's a horrible place to be.
It is. I get those calls too, and it's a horrible place to be. You're absolutely right.
And I have to tell my clients quite often when we're looking at things like that the worst place to be with an older person is when they're between the part of making sound, good decisions and mentally incapacitated, because I can't protect somebody from making dumb decisions. And quite often when they're in that middle zone, they know what they're doing. They're not being exploited. They're not being under duress. arrests or anything like that, but they're making horrible decisions, and you can't protect against that. And this is one of those, it sounds like this person's in that area, doesn't want their children. I mean, to me, the issue would be to look into how legitimate those complaints are that the kids aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if the health continues to decline, you can always get Adult Protective Services back involved, and also try to get a guardianship type of situation started where a third-party guardian can be appointed to oversee this person.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
APS has been, we talk about how overloaded they are. And I've seen that this is not an area that they jump into very easily, just because it's such a difficult area to try to maneuver. And they've got so many other cases that they're dealing with that are very clear physical abuse and that kind of thing. When you're talking about he said, she said, or the family, is the family member competent, or are they, are they delusional when they're talking about this stuff? And that's a tough place to be.
It's very hard.
I hadn't been here very long. I've now been here almost 5 years, but I had not been here very long till we got a call from a hospice, inpatient hospice place that we had done some things for. And they wanted Fred to come out to visit with this person who claimed that she needed to change her POA immediately because her son was stealing from her. And Fred had a talk with me. He sat down, had a talk with me, and exactly this, that it could be paranoia, because he has seen this before. If she was in, that he would talk to with the people, yes. And he went, well, actually, he did go out and the woman was right on the money. Well, I hate to, I didn't mean that as a pun. Sorry, poor choice of words. But she was absolutely correct. And Fred was able to help her. But he told me just as likely as that they go through the paranoia stage when they're in dementia and Alzheimer's, and they may think that when it's actually not. And so it is but Fred was so kind, and he went and talked with her, and the hospice place was so thrilled that he did, because at least they got that resolved, and he was able to figure that out, I think, pretty easily. The guy was absolutely doing that. But, it is just like what we're talking about. That's why if you don't have the planning ahead of time for these issues, then it's just hard, because you can't get a guardianship with the person. Well, you have to do nothing but get a guardianship. So
I've done situations where when it was questionable, we went and we redid some new estate planning documents, the power of attorney, medical power of attorney, and appointed a third-party private fiduciary, somebody that's not related to the family, and that person can pretty quickly see whether things were being done right or not, or whether this person's paranoid or not. And I've also had where I brought in psychologists, neurologists to evaluate the person to see if they are paranoid, and so bring in a medical professional to look into that. So there are a couple options in that regard to try to figure it out. One of the questions I just saw at the end, and I don't know the answer to this, I'm hoping somebody does, is how do we save these chats on these recordings? Is there a way for?
I have them saved.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the resources are available for you. So Sandy, everything.
I think I can create a link, create a document link for them and put them in the follow-up email.
Fred, do you ever refer these family issues to mediators?
There is that option. Yes. I don't do it a lot, but there is mediation available for families in the elder law area. It's becoming more and more popular now.
Just to let you know, I do have the chats. I don't know that I have the, I'll try to get the answered questions as well. It's not as easy to do that, but I'll try to figure that out. Anybody else?
Am I able to place two people whom I've been caring for, one 9 years and one 7, basically no family contact, and I am payee? I'm looking into placement for them at this moment. They're getting to where they need more care. I don't
even know where to go with that.
either.
I would think you need to visit with a professional and get into that further with them in understanding the specific circumstances and what's going on there. Because you may find out when you try to place them that all of a sudden family shows up, but if you're going to get them to agree to something, the time to do that is when they're cognitively able to do that. And as we talk about, whether they're delusional or not, I know we're speaking to the choir out there with all of you who deal with this on a daily basis, but so many times that has to do with what time of day you're talking to them and what kind of shape they're in on that day, because that can change on a day-to-day basis, whether they're really delusional or not. And that's so hard. That's why the professional, having them evaluated, because in my experience, the professional not only talks to the person, but also talks to the people that are caring for them to get a clear understanding of whether what they're seeing at the time is what's going on all the time, or whether we're just seeing a glimpse of them at their best and not seeing the full picture.
Fred, how often does it become the client's attorney who steps up to step in with the remedy with even a non-legal service arrangement?
I don't know for other attorneys, so I can't answer that as a kind of general, how often do the client's attorney do this? But the client's attorney should. The client's attorney should be looking at all the different things and all the issues that are involved in their client and bring in, as I mentioned earlier, a good elder law attorney looks at things holistically okay, how do I care for this person more than just providing them legal documents or whatever I'm doing? What else do they need? And so we do that all the time. We look at other services. I know attorneys in my office are constantly going into Sheila's office saying, hey, Sheila, do you have a resource for this? Do you have a resource for that? Because we're trying to provide more than just legal services. But I don't know as a whole. Most elder law attorneys that I've dealt with are kind of look at it the same way we do. They do everything they can to try to help in every regard.
That's all I see.
Very good. Very, very good. Well, Fred and Sheila, thank you once again for an exceptional webinar. We so appreciate it. Great information.